Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world that's somehow even more stressful than today's group chat, being a single mother in the 1950s. That's right, it's time to leave behind your phone notifications and the existential dread of modern parenting apps and sink into a simpler, but definitely not easier, era. So before you kick back, please like, subscribe, and comment, but only if you actually enjoy this. Drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what decade you wish you'd skip if given the choice. And statistically, there's probably a single mom from 1957 watching over you in ghostly judgment right now. Now, dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soft vintage appliance hum, and get as comfortable as you can in your own bed, because tonight, you're going to need all the comfort you can get. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what single motherhood was really like in a world without DoorDash, gentle parenting podcasts, or reliable antidepressants? How many casseroles can one woman fake her way through at a church potluck before someone notices the secret ingredient is existential despair? Was there really a right way to fold a tea towel? Or was that just something invented by magazine editors with too much free time? Could you survive a week being judged by neighbors, pastors, and PTA committees who all know your business before you do? What happens when the washing machine breaks, your paycheck disappears, and the dog starts eyeing your last can of Spam? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1954, in a tiny post-war bungalow with too much linoleum, a single income, barely, and a society determined to remind you constantly that you are not, in fact, doing it right. Welcome to your new life as a single mom in the 50s. Good luck. Congratulations. It's 6:02 a.m. And your day begins not with a sunrise, but with a neighbor peering through the curtains, wondering why there's no man's hat on the coat rack. You grope for instant coffee, which tastes like caffeinated regret, and steel yourself for the day ahead. Welcome to single motherhood, where the only thing stronger than your coffee is everyone's opinion about your life. Outside, the world is still dark, except for the gentle glow of Mrs. Cranston's kitchen window across the street, a beacon of early morning surveillance. You haven't even put on your slippers, and already you can feel the collective eyebrows of your suburban block rising. In 1954, the only thing faster than the milkman is the local grapevine, and in the pecking order of post-war suburbia, a single mother ranks somewhere below a house with an unkempt lawn but slightly above the people who never return casserole dishes. You shuffle to the kitchen, your feet freezing on cracked linoleum, and try to remember if you bought coffee with flavor crystals or just the kind that's half sawdust. The radio crackles in the background, promising you a day of sunny optimism and low-fat recipes, both of which feel personally targeted. You measure out the instant coffee, one heaping teaspoon of survival, one splash of evaporated milk, and take a cautious sip. Instantly, your taste buds organize a protest. But caffeine is caffeine, and dignity is optional. Let's talk about the ambience. The house is quiet, but not in the peaceful way. More in the ticking clock, pending disaster sense. Somewhere down the hall, a child stirs, and you listen for the sound of socks being argued over, toys being weaponized, or a dog plotting against the garbage can. Every day starts with a mental roll call of your worries. Did you sign the permission slip? Can you afford shoes this month? Did you remember to move the car so it doesn't get ticketed for blocking the fire hydrant again? In the 1950s, problems are like houseplants. You water them with worry, and somehow they only grow stronger. You glance toward the window and catch a movement. Yes, Mrs. Cranston is definitely watching. Maybe she's just checking the weather, or maybe she's counting the coffee cups, calculating how many adults live here, and preparing a fresh report for the afternoon phone tree. You smile and wave, the universal signal of, "I'm fine. Everything's fine. Please don't call my mother. It doesn't matter." In the time it takes you to butter 2 slices of day-old bread, your relationship status is being discussed 2 houses down. The morning routine is a ritual of hope and damage control. You tiptoe into bedrooms, whispering good morning, as if you're the world's most exhausted flight attendant. You gather up socks, shoes, and emotional baggage, sorting them into piles, clean, dirty, and existential. Breakfast is prepared with the careful optimism of a magician pulling rabbits out of hats, except your rabbit is a leftover pancake, and the hat is last night's frying pan. You spread margarine with the determination of someone who knows real butter is for special occasions only. As the kids emerge, bleary-eyed and full of questions, you run a quick inventory of their clothes, hair, and visible wounds. You attempt to smooth cowlicks, button collars, and erase the evidence of last night's late-night cookie raid. The goal is simple. Send everyone into the world looking just normal enough to escape comment, but not so perfect that people think you're overcompensating. Meanwhile, the coffee sits cooling beside you, now the temperature and viscosity of used motor oil, but somehow still comforting. The morning soundtrack is a symphony of spoons clinking, children bickering, and a radio announcer telling you that somewhere, someone has invented a labor-saving device that you will never be able to afford. Before you know it, the clock is racing, shoes are laced, sandwiches are bagged, and you herd the children toward the door, steeling yourself for another day under the world's friendliest microscope. You lock up, tug your coat tight, and step out onto the porch, ready to face the world's questions and its endless, bottomless pot of instant coffee. Welcome to the morning. Judgment served hot, just like your regrets. You open the fridge, it's mostly air, some butter, and a single egg judging you for not getting married. Breakfast is a culinary exercise in resourcefulness. Can you turn bread crusts and canned peaches into something that looks like love? Spoiler: with enough sugar, anything is possible. This is not just any morning meal. This is a daily audition for the role of competent mother in the great drama of 1950s suburbia. Step 1. Survey the landscape. You have a loaf of bread with more ends than middle, a nearly empty jar of grape jelly, and a can of peaches, purchased on sale and hoarded like a family secret. Your audience, the kids, shuffle into the kitchen, eyes full of hope, stomachs full of expectation, and the faint hope that today's breakfast will resemble something from a television commercial instead of a food rationing seminar. You reach for the egg, cradling it like a fragile relic from a more prosperous civilization. Should you scramble it and split it 3 ways? Should you stretch it with a splash of milk, turning it into something called French toast if you say the words fast enough and no one asks follow-up questions? Maybe today's theme is surprise omelette, starring whatever's left in the bottom of the crisper drawer, half a green pepper, 2 limp scallions, and a single, heroic slice of American cheese, its edges curled in artistic protest. But first, bread. The heel of the loaf, universally shunned, now repurposed as the foundation for greatness. You dunk it in your makeshift egg batter, dusting off your inner Julia Child, and try to ignore the fact that the recipe you're using is roughly 70% hope and 30% denial. You fry the bread in a little butter, watching it sizzle and puff, transforming from disappointment into something almost appetizing. You tell the kids it's breakfast toast surprise. The surprise, of course, is that there's only enough for everyone to have half a slice. Meanwhile, the canned peaches are summoned from the pantry, the can opener, a stubborn gatekeeper to fruity salvation. You plop the syrupy slices into a bowl, dividing them with the precision of a medieval king doling out gold coins. Each child gets 2 slices. You keep the syrup for later, a secret ingredient in tomorrow's oatmeal, or maybe, in a moment of reckless optimism, as an ice cream topping for a birthday that's still months away. Resourcefulness is your greatest ally and also your greatest enemy. You become an expert at culinary camouflage. Leftover potatoes are hash, old bread becomes croutons, and the heel of the cheese is grated and melted over anything, instantly transforming it into a casserole. You once heard a TV chef say presentation is everything, so you cut the toast diagonally, arrange the peaches in a smile, and sprinkle a little sugar over everything, as if to say, "Look, kids, we're living the sweet life. No one needs to know it's just regular table sugar and a lot of wishful thinking." The kids are surprisingly adaptable. They ask if you'll ever make pancakes, like Mrs. Johnson down the street. You say, "Maybe next Sunday," which is code for when Aunt Edna visits and brings groceries. In the meantime, You distract them with stories about how this is how they eat in Paris, or cowboys used to eat just like this on the prairie. It's part truth, part bedtime story, and mostly an attempt to make them feel like breakfast is an adventure, not a lesson in scarcity. You sip your own coffee, black and bitter, and watch as the kids eat, happily unaware of the great balancing act happening behind the scenes. Every meal is a small miracle, stitched together from leftovers, sales, and a pinch of maternal magic. By the time the plates are cleared, every crumb accounted for, you've managed to convince the world, and maybe even yourself, that love can be served up on a shoestring, as long as you have enough sugar and a little imagination. In the world of 1950s single motherhood, breakfast is less about nutrition and more about resilience. You may not have bacon and eggs every morning, but you have ingenuity, humor, and the ability to turn a single egg into a memory. And really, what's more nourishing than that? No one in this house has matching socks, ever. You try to get your children dressed in presentable outfits for school, but the laundry cycle is as broken as your sleep schedule. At this point, you're just hoping everyone leaves the house with shoes on the correct feet. This is the battleground of the morning, your living room transformed into a chaotic staging area, where mismatched socks, inside-out shirts, and arguments over whose turn it is to wear the good sweater rage on in a low-level hum of anarchy. If you had $1 for every time you heard, "Mom, have you seen my?" followed by an item you definitely haven't seen since the Eisenhower administration, you might actually be able to afford socks that come in more than 3 colors. The elusive missing sock is more than just a laundry mishap. It's a metaphor for single motherhood in the 1950s. Somewhere between the rickety washer's final spin and the mad dash for the school bus, a black hole opens in your home, devouring hosiery, hair ribbons, and occasionally your will to live. You rummage through baskets, drawers, and couch cushions, extracting a green argyle, a red striped ankle sock, and something you suspect used to be a glove. You assemble the day's pairs like a museum curator, holding each up to the light with a resigned sigh before declaring them close enough. Clothes, of course, are another story. There's no Pinterest board for 1950s hand-me-down fashion. Your son's pants are an inch too short, your daughter's dress is mysteriously stained, and the Sunday best sweater is missing a button you promised to sew last Wednesday. Each child stands before you like a junior executive ready for a performance review, except their KPIs are minimal, visible stains, and not actively falling apart. You try to instill pride. No one will notice that tear if you keep your coat on. And it's called vintage, sweetheart. It's a masterclass in spin, and you deliver it daily, armed with safety pins and a prayer. Then come the hair emergencies. You become a one-woman styling salon, parting, braiding, flattening, and taming with the skill of a circus animal trainer. Bobby pins are currency, ponytails are negotiation tactics, and every cowlick is a personal attack. You wield a wet comb with the solemnity of a surgeon, muttering, "Hold still," as you attempt to corral a week's worth of tangles. There's a strong chance one of your kids will resemble a dandelion by lunch, but you take solace in the fact that school photos aren't until spring. Every step of the routine is a logistical puzzle. Shoes are always missing, usually one from each pair, as if they're plotting against you. The youngest insists on wearing galoshes. Even in July, the oldest tries to convince you that sandals and socks are in. You do a quick spot check. Lunchboxes, homework, jackets, and, miracle of miracles, everyone is at least covered in fabric. Shoes, on feet, laces, mostly tied. You mentally award yourself a merit badge for most functional chaos. All the while, time is your enemy. The clock ticks louder, the bus honks from the end of the block, and suddenly you're launching children out the door in a flurry of shouts, book bags, and half-eaten toast. You kiss each one on the head, sometimes twice, just in case, and shout after them, "Be good, don't trade lunches." And remember, socks are a state of mind. The door closes, the house falls silent, and you survey the aftermath. An explosion of laundry, empty cereal bowls, and a lone sock abandoned on the banister, taunting you. You pick it up, smile, and toss it in the basket of lost causes, already bracing for tomorrow's rematch. Getting the kids ready isn't just about outfits, it's about daily resilience, a masterwork of improvisation, patience, and the unspoken hope that, even if nothing matches, everything might still turn out all right. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find that other sock someday. You march the kids to school through a gauntlet of stairs, each neighbor's gaze suggesting you've single-handedly destroyed Western civilization. "No husband?" they whisper. You nod politely, pretending you didn't hear, while considering whether to move to Canada. The sidewalk is freshly swept and the hedges perfectly trimmed, but there's nothing in the neighborhood association rules about how to handle public scrutiny. Each step down the block feels like crossing a parade route, lined with the International Olympic Judging Panel for Single Mothers. Mrs. Hoffman peeks out from behind her floral curtains, mouth set in a line as tight as her weekly hairdo. Mr. Beck, mowing his lawn at precisely 8:03 a.m., as always, offers a curt nod that's somewhere between good morning and have you considered repentance? You keep your head high, balancing lunchboxes, homework folders, and a toddler determined to walk backwards for reasons known only to toddlers. The children seem immune to the tension, skipping ahead, asking questions about frogs and spelling tests and whether they'll get chocolate milk today. Meanwhile, you field the morning's real quiz. Can you keep your composure while Mrs. Cranston casually mentions how her niece, who married a dentist, never has to do this walk alone? The unsung challenge of the school drop-off is performing normalcy. You smile, wave, and murmur good morning as if you're starring in a commercial for self-reliance. You adjust your coat, smooth a stray lock of hair, and keep a brisk pace, ignoring the way Mrs. Nelson's poodle seems to glare at you in solidarity with its owner. There's always someone watering their garden or collecting a suspiciously early delivery, ready to deliver the day's weather update. Chilly, isn't it? With the subtext, chillier without a man, I bet. Children from every house pour into the street, lunch pails swinging, shoes scuffing. Most have two parents escorting them, like some kind of mid-century Noah's Ark of social respectability. You're an outlier, a solo act in a world built for duets. At the intersection, the crossing guard, retired, benevolent, and approximately 140 years old, offers you a conspiratorial smile. She remembers a time when nobody batted an eye at who brought the children to school, but even she can't stop the slow churn of small-town curiosity. Approaching the schoolyard is both a relief and a new trial. The playground is a sea of shined shoes and pressed collars, and you can spot the other single mothers by their brisk efficiency and their avoidance of the Moms Club bench. You exchange a glance with Mrs. Garcia, who raises her coffee thermos in silent salute. There's a sisterhood here, a quiet understanding, though it's mostly communicated through raised eyebrows and eye rolls. As you reach the school doors, you kneel for a quick round of hugs and whispered reminders. Be kind, don't eat the glue, remember your library book. The kids race off, their world expanding with every step, blissfully unaware of the grown-up dramas that swirl in their wake. You linger for a moment, checking your pockets for stray permission slips, stalling as if you might spot your own acceptance letter to this carefully curated community. Finally, with the children inside, you turn for the walk home. The gauntlet is still there, but the stairs have softened. Maybe it's sympathy, maybe it's boredom. Or maybe, just maybe, they've realized you're not a one-woman demolition crew after all. The air is brisk, the street is quiet, and for a moment, it almost feels like any other morning. You head home, shoes crunching on the sidewalk, your heart a little lighter. You survived another school drop-off. Western civilization, miraculously, remains intact. And while Canada is still on the table, for today, your greatest act of rebellion is simply walking this route, again and again, with your head held high. Congratulations, you are now a secretary, a telephone operator, or, if you're lucky, a department store clerk. You balance a pay stub so thin it could be used as a bookmark, while fending off your boss's friendly advice on everything from hem lengths to home economics. The 1950s workforce isn't exactly a welcoming utopia for single mothers. It's more like a game show where all the prizes are pay cuts and the bonus round is guess what you did wrong this time. You clock in before the sun is fully up, carefully smoothing your skirt and praying the coffee stain on your blouse goes unnoticed. The office itself is a world of clattering typewriters, the constant drone of ringing phones, and a fluorescent buzz that's one shade away from existential crisis. You take your place at your desk, sandwiched between the water cooler and the filing cabinet that squeaks like it's auditioning for a haunted house. You start the day with a stack of memos, most of which appear to have been written in ancient Sumerian. Your boss, Mr. Grant, materializes at your elbow with his signature mug of World's Best Boss, and an uncanny ability to notice if your hair is a quarter-inch longer than company policy permits. "Smile, Judy," he says, even though your name isn't Judy. You know, customers like a cheerful girl at the front. He dispenses unsolicited wisdom like candy, but with none of the sweetness. Advice about lipstick shades, reminders to sit up straight, posture is important, and occasionally a tip about how to catch a husband before it's too late. You thank him and fantasize about responding with a typewriter to the shins, but instead you file invoices, answer phones, and become a master at looking busy. Lunch break is a luxury. 15 minutes to eat a cheese sandwich at your desk, or, if you're feeling social, in the drafty break room with the other working women. Conversation revolves around grocery prices, rationing gasoline, and the ongoing saga of whose boss is the worst. The answer is always a tie. You swap recipes that involve a lot of canned soup and discuss whose child brought home the most questionable art project from school. Back at your post, the afternoon is an exercise in patience and creative survival. You alphabetize files with the speed of someone who's done this 1,000 times, because you have. You juggle a million tasks, typing letters, making coffee, pretending not to hear the men in the corner talking about the new girl's gams. If you're at the department store, it's aching feet and endless "Can I help you find something, ma'am?" to customers who would rather be anywhere else. For every hour you're paid, you spend 2 worrying about bills. You stretch each paycheck like a magician pulling scarves from a hat, except the scarves are just bills marked overdue. The office gossip mill turns steadily, powered by the knowledge that you, the single mother, are always being measured. Your clothes, your lunch, your attitude, your ring finger. You dodge questions about your situation by reciting lines like, "Just focusing on my kids right now," while internally tallying up how much it'll cost to fix the leaky faucet. When the clock finally crawls to quitting time, you gather your things with a sigh of relief and a quick glance at your to-do list for tomorrow. You survived another day in a world that was never built for you, a world where every miss is tinged with pity, every mom with suspicion, and every "can you stay late?" with the knowledge that your real job is just beginning at home. But for now, you put on your coat, nod politely to Mr. Grant, and step out into the evening with your head high and your wallet, well, not empty, exactly, just optimistically thin, because if you can handle this office, you can handle anything, even another day of instant coffee and friendly advice. It's noon, and you have exactly 17 minutes for lunch, which consists of cold soup in a thermos and whatever your kids didn't finish at breakfast. You eat in the break room under a flickering fluorescent light, dreaming of a world where avocado toast exists. The break room is decorated in that unmistakable shade of government green, with walls that seem to whisper, "No joy allowed." A lonely vending machine hums in the corner, taunting you with candy bars you can't afford and potato chips you'd trade your last can of Spam for. Your lunch companions, a trio of equally tired women, have already staked out their favorite seats. One clutches a bologna sandwich, another has a single apple and a cup of optimism, and the third is bravely wrestling with the concept of salad, using only iceberg lettuce, and the hope that dressing counts as a vegetable. You unscrew your thermos and pour out the soup, which is only soup in the technical sense, a thin, vaguely tomato-ish liquid with the occasional noodle, a floating pea, and the overwhelming flavor of bought on sale. You retrieve a squished half of peanut butter sandwich from your bag, courtesy of your youngest, who decided mid-breakfast that peanut butter was for babies. It is now your main course, and you savor it in 3 efficient bites. 17 minutes may seem generous, But time evaporates in the break room, sped along by the nervous tick of a wall clock that's seen better decades. You make polite conversation, mostly about prices, bread, milk, shoes for the kids. Someone brings up the idea of a raise, and everyone laughs so hard it echoes in the empty hallway. Your mind drifts to a parallel universe where you lunch on leafy greens and toast so lavishly topped that it requires an entire Instagram filter just to exist. The only wellness trend in this room is pretending that one of the vending machine's candy bars could count as self-care. You mentally scan your purse for spare change, but remember you spent your last quarter on bus fare. Someone opens a magazine and reads out loud the latest miracle recipe, chicken a la king from leftover chicken and a dream. You nod, jotting it down, knowing you're more likely to have a king than leftover chicken. The break room, much like the rest of your life, runs on resourcefulness and a sense of humor drier than the crackers you keep in your drawer for emergencies. You sip the lukewarm soup, trying not to imagine how it tasted the first time it was heated. Every bite is a balancing act between pride and practicality, hunger and humility. Your co-workers share tips. If you stir in a packet of ketchup, it almost tastes like tomato soup. Or add hot water to stretch the can. Everyone is an alchemist, transforming rations into meals and budget despair into quiet camaraderie. The conversation veers toward the latest office gossip: who might get promoted, whose son won a spelling bee, who brought brownies to church. It's a brief, welcome distraction, and for a few minutes, you almost forget that your lunch is someone else's leftovers and that you're already mentally preparing what to make for dinner out of the week's remaining pantry surprises. As the fluorescent light flickers above, you feel the fatigue creeping in, the kind of tired that no amount of sleep or caffeine can fix. You fold up your napkin, sweep the last crumb into your bag, and glance at the clock. Lunch is over. The world of wellness will have to wait for another century. You gather yourself, nod goodbye to your comrades in crime, and march back to your desk, fortified by friendship, 3 sips of soup, and the stubborn pride that comes from making something out of nothing, again and again. In 1950s America, lunch isn't a break, it's just another battle, and as you wash out your thermos in the tiny sink, you whisper a silent prayer for strength, for patience, and, maybe one day, for a sandwich that wasn't rejected by a 6-year-old. After work, you navigate the supermarket with military precision. Coupons in hand, you dodge gossiping housewives and make complex choices. Should you buy apples or afford the electric bill? Your cart is mostly store brand, but you walk with the posture of someone who could afford name brand ketchup. This is no ordinary grocery run. This is a tactical mission behind enemy lines, except your enemy is inflation, judgment, and the ever-present risk of running into Mrs. Cranston from next door, who treats the produce aisle like her own private confessional. You march in, clipboard ready, list written in your neatest "please don't judge my handwriting" script. Each item on the list is a negotiation, a minor miracle, or both. The entrance alone is an obstacle course. First, there's the weekly gauntlet of sales displays. You pause, studying the pyramid of canned corn, 3 for $1, limit 6, while calculating whether corn is technically a vegetable or just another way to add filler to the nightly casserole. You slip past the magazine rack and resist the urge to buy a tabloid. Even in 1954, scandal is tempting, but grocery budgets are not. The produce section is where hope goes to wilt. Apples look fresh and shiny, each one daring you to ignore the price tag. Bananas? Only if they're on sale, and at least 2 days away from banana bread territory. You rifle through the oranges, pretending not to notice the other shoppers watching your every move, what you buy, how you squeeze, whether you go for the bruised ones at half price. The supermarket isn't just a place to shop. It's an open-air theater for suburban one-upmanship. As you move through the aisles, your cart steadily fills with store-brand beans, day-old bread, and whatever cereal happens to be on special this week. The kids will inevitably protest, arguing the virtues of sugar-frosted flakes over bran, but you've perfected the art of deflection. We're buying grown-up cereal because it makes you smart. In reality, it makes you regular, which in the 50s is almost the same thing. The real safari is in the center aisles. Here you encounter other mothers in their natural habitat, armed with coupon clippers and the latest gossip. "Did you hear about Helen's new car?" one whispers. "I heard her husband got a raise." There's a subtle tension, as if everyone's measuring each other's cart for signs of prosperity or, more dangerously, signs of struggle. You keep your head high and your shopping list higher, wielding it like a shield. The dairy section is the final trial. Milk is non-negotiable, but butter? Butter is for the blessed. Margarine, the humble stand-in, is your household standard, though you always glance longingly at the golden-wrapped bricks stacked in the case. Cheese is rationed, eggs are an occasional treat, and yogurt is just a rumor, something you read about in women's magazines, somewhere between advice on keeping your figure and how to make gelatin salads. Checkout is where the real adrenaline kicks in. You stack your groceries on the conveyor with the precision of a blackjack dealer, grouping items for maximum discount potential. The cashier, a high school girl with hair teased to the heavens, eyes your coupons and gives you a look that suggests she's seen it all before. You smile back, grateful and defiant, because every penny saved is a victory, even if your pride takes a hit. Bags packed, you head for the door. Outside, the air is cool, your arms full, your head already tallying what you forgot toilet paper every time. The car is waiting, an old sedan with a trunk that smells faintly of desperation and canned peas. You climb in, take a breath, and congratulate yourself. Another successful safari, another week of dinners won by sheer willpower and a stack of double-value coupons. In the wilds of the supermarket, you are both hunter and prey. But you survive, again and again, with dignity intact, and, if you're lucky, a single, perfect apple for the road home. The kids are home and instantly hungry. You help with arithmetic, which seems designed by sadists, and referee arguments over who gets the last slice of Wonder Bread. Multitasking in the 1950s isn't about apps, it's about keeping the dog from eating the science project. The front door bursts open at 3:16 p.m., like the starting gun for a domestic triathlon. Shoes are flung in a perfect arc toward the hallway. Book bags land with a thud, and within seconds, every child in the house is clamoring for a snack, as if they haven't eaten since the Truman administration. You barely have time to remove your sensible work shoes before you're besieged by demands for peanut butter, jelly, cookies, and, on especially optimistic days, ice cream. You offer apple slices, but this is met with suspicion. You pivot to saltines, which they devour in 30 seconds flat, before returning to their original question, "What's for dinner?" You scan the pantry with the desperate hope that inspiration will strike. But your mind is already being pulled in 10 directions. At the kitchen table, arithmetic homework sits open, taunting you with story problems involving trains leaving stations at impossible times. You attempt to help, only to be told, "That's not how the teacher does it, Mom." Apparently, the teacher's method involves more suffering and at least one extra step that no living adult can decipher. You grit your teeth, do your best, and offer to call Aunt Edna, the family's only known math wizard. Meanwhile, the living room is ground zero for sibling warfare. The children are locked in negotiations over who gets the last slice of Wonder Bread, treating it like the final ration in a besieged city. The youngest claims oldest gets the biggest, the oldest claims finders, keepers, and the middle child declares, "I licked it, so it's mine." Your job is not so much referee as United Nations peacekeeper, and your only weapons are a weary voice and the threat of no TV tonight. The Wonder Bread is ultimately split with surgical precision, crusts reserved for the dog, who now hovers, sensing opportunity. The dog, for its part, is a one-animal cleanup crew, opportunist, and wildcard in the battle for post-school snacks. You catch him mid-pounce, just as he's about to abscond with a shoebox labeled Volcano Project, Do Not Touch. The crisis is averted, barely, and you issue a lecture about science, responsibility, and not leaving baking soda volcanoes where pets can eat them. Once snacks are dispensed and volcanoes rescued, it's time for round 2, reading homework. You listen as your youngest slowly sounds out the cat sat, resisting the urge to finish every sentence. Your middle child is writing a report on Abraham Lincoln and asks, "Mom, was Lincoln a Democrat or a cowboy?" You give the best answer you can while helping your eldest recite multiplication tables, all while making mental notes to pick up poster board, glue, and perhaps a degree in child psychology. It's not just schoolwork either. Permission slips need signing. Lunchboxes need washing. Somebody has glued their mittens together in an unsupervised burst of creativity. There's a missing shoe, a mysterious stain on the couch, and an impromptu chorus of, "He's touching me." A performance that lasts from now until bedtime. The noise level in the house rivals a jet engine. You try to maintain order, dispensing bandages, life advice, and the occasional cookie bribe. You wonder how the mothers on television manage to keep their homes so clean and their children so docile. Maybe they have a secret stash of tranquilizers, or maybe their scripts just don't include spilled grape juice and unresolved sibling feuds. Somehow, homework gets finished, at least you think it does, and the chaos ebbs just enough for you to start thinking about dinner. The kids finally scatter, chasing the dog or building blanket forts. You take a deep breath, survey the battlefield, and remind yourself you survived another round. In the world of 1950s, single motherhood, multitasking isn't just a skill, it's an Olympic sport. And tonight, once again, you take home the gold. You assemble a casserole from whatever's lurking in the pantry and top it with a layer of crushed cornflakes for that homemade touch. The kids ask if Dad's coming home for dinner. You say, "Not tonight," and move on. Like a pro, the dinner hour is the real witching hour in the single-mother household of the 1950s, a strange twilight zone where culinary improvisation meets family diplomacy. You stand in the kitchen, channeling the spirit of a weary alchemist, as you evaluate your raw materials. 1 can of creamed soup, a half-empty box of elbow macaroni, a handful of limp green beans, and, the pièce de résistance, a single hot dog, sliced into coins to give the illusion of abundance. The beauty of a casserole, you've learned, is that it's the original choose-your-own-adventure meal. Some nights it's tuna, some nights it's mystery meat, and some nights it's just noodles and hope, with a dash of salt. You stir everything together with that uniquely 1950s optimism that maybe, just maybe, a can of mushroom soup can fix anything. The cornflake topping, crushed in a zip-top bag with a rolling pin, or, let's be honest, the heel of your shoe, is both a garnish and a statement. This is dinner, and it will crunch, one way or another. As the casserole bakes, filling the house with a smell that is somehow both nostalgic and suspicious, you set the table. The plates are mismatched, the forks slightly bent, but you lay them out with care. There's a ritual to it. Napkins folded, glasses filled with reconstituted orange juice, and a centerpiece that's whatever the youngest picked from the yard. A dandelion, a rock, sometimes a suspiciously sticky pine cone. The kids take their places with a mix of hunger and wariness, eyeing the bubbling dish as if it might move on its own. Dinner conversation begins, as it always does, with a question. Is Dad coming home? It's asked with a nonchalance that masks a world of curiosity and longing, and you've become a master of the gentle sidestep. "Not tonight," you say, breezily, as you dish up helpings that are equal parts nutrition and illusion. Conversation shifts quickly to the important matters: who got the most cornflakes, whose piece of hot dog is the biggest, and whether dessert is even possible tonight. You referee debates about peas. Do I have to eat them? Can I trade for more cornflakes? And remind everyone that trying new things builds character, which, in this house, is the most heavily built thing of all. You listen to the chorus of clinking forks and soft complaints, offering praise for every bite, every attempt at green beans, every diplomatic exchange of crusty corners. In moments like these, you become part chef, part psychologist, part United Nations envoy. You keep the conversation light, stories about school, jokes about the dog, and the occasional recitation of knock-knock jokes, so old even the wallpaper groans. The food is humble, but the ritual is sacred. This is where the family comes together, trading stories and negotiating peace. You try not to dwell on the empty chair at the table, focusing instead on the full plates in front of you and the laughter that occasionally bubbles up, bright and defiant. When dinner ends, you scrape the last bits from the pan and package leftovers for tomorrow's lunch, which you will confidently rebrand as casserole surprise. The kids scatter to homework and comic books, leaving behind a battlefield of dishes and sticky fingerprints. You linger at the table for a moment longer, savoring the silence and the lingering smell of cornflakes. You did it. One more meal, one more day. In the world of single motherhood, every casserole is a quiet triumph, and every night you feed your family is a small, crunchy miracle. Dishes pile up like the unpaid bills on your counter. The vacuum wheezes in protest, and you eye the linoleum floor with a sense of betrayal. Cleaning is endless, but you do it because apparently someone might visit unexpectedly at any moment. There's a unique cruelty to the 1950s housewife standard. Even as a single mother with a full-time job, you're still supposed to maintain a home that looks like a Better Homes and Gardens cover, even if you personally feel like the before photo. The sun has barely set, but the kitchen is already a battlefield of casserole dishes, crusted forks, and a stack of glasses that threaten to collapse and cause a minor domestic disaster. You sigh, roll up your sleeves, and get to work. The dish soap is lemon-scented in theory, but after 3 rounds through greasy pots, it now smells faintly of resignation. You scrub, rinse, and stack, quietly wishing for a magical fairy, or, failing that, a dishwasher. Your hands, once youthful, now bear the faint pruniness of someone who's spent a lifetime at the kitchen sink, because, technically, you have. You daydream about the future, a place with robot maids and self-cleaning floors, while the present offers nothing but suds and the eternal question: who used 3 spoons for one dinner? Moving on to the living room, you're greeted by a constellation of crumbs mapped out across the carpet, each representing a child's journey from couch to kitchen and back again. You haul out the vacuum, an artifact as heavy and moody as an oil drum, plug it in, and brace for the familiar wheezing groan that suggests it may quit on you at any moment. The vacuum roars to life, sounding like a propeller plane in a small room, and you wage war on the scattered debris. Every pass is a negotiation. You win a little, the carpet loses a little, and somewhere beneath the sofa lurks a Lego waiting to sabotage your night. Next, the bathroom. Here lies evidence of children who view the sink as a suggestion and toothpaste as finger paint. You wipe down the counter, retrieve hairpins from mysterious corners, and run the world's quickest inventory of soap slivers. Towels are hung with optimistic precision. You know they'll hit the floor in under an hour, but at least you can say you tried. The bedrooms are another frontier. You corral pajamas, rescue wayward socks, and attempt to smooth out sheets that seem to resist all laws of physics. Toys are returned to bins, books stacked, and mysterious sticky substances removed with industrial-grade elbow grease. You tell yourself this is character building for the children, mainly your character. In the midst of your cleaning marathon, you keep one eye on the clock and the other on the window, just in case an unexpected guest materializes. Maybe it'll be a neighbor returning a casserole dish, or perhaps a well-meaning church lady with a spare pie and 1,000 questions. You live in fear of the pop-in visit, the ultimate test of suburban respectability. The dream, of course, is to always have a living room so spotless it could double as a hospital waiting area. The reality, most days, you're aiming for no visible science experiments. The process feels endless, a choreographed dance you perform nightly, clearing, scrubbing, organizing, and occasionally cursing the day linoleum was invented. Yet even as exhaustion creeps in, there's a peculiar comfort in the routine. You set things right, if only for a moment. You reclaim a bit of order from the chaos, proving, if only to yourself, that you're still in control. And when the last plate is dried, the vacuum is retired, and the house is quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the soft exhale of your own relief, you can finally sit down. You did it. Again. Cleaning up yesterday's mess is less about keeping up appearances and more about carving out a tiny sanctuary in the middle of mayhem. In the world of single motherhood, that counts as victory. You sit in a folding chair, surrounded by other mothers who treat marriage like an Olympic sport. The room smells of hairspray, coffee, and thinly veiled judgment. You smile, nod, and mentally prepare your answer for the inevitable. Is your husband away on business? It's 7:04 p.m., and the fluorescent lights flicker above as if they, too, are nervous about the evening's proceedings. The PTA president, Mrs. Dobson, stands at the front in her double-knit suit, wielding a clipboard like a sword. Her voice is cheery, but you can tell she means business, the kind that involves sign-up sheets, bake sale quotas, and, of course, evaluating everyone's domestic situation with the scrutiny of a prize pig judge at the county fair. The mothers gather in small pods, gossip and competitive small talk circulating faster than the punch bowl. Did you see the Johnsons' new station wagon? Marge's casserole won first prize at the church social again. Do you use real butter or margarine for your shortbread? The subtext of every exchange, are you measuring up? The answer is always maybe, but only if you squint. You find your place in the back row, chair creaking ominously, and clutch your coffee cup, a cheap paper affair half full of bitter brew and wholly full of your hopes for camouflage. Next to you, Mrs. Evans flashes a bright smile and launches into a story about her husband's big promotion, dropping the words executive and golf club in the first sentence. You nod encouragingly, resisting the urge to ask if he's ever home, or if he, too, is away on business in a very permanent sense. The meeting begins with a round of applause for last month's Family Values campaign, followed by a detailed report on the upcoming Sock Hop fundraiser. Every event seems to involve pairs, parent-child, mother-father, good home, and better home. The room vibrates with the unsaid truth that your solo status is both a curiosity and a cautionary tale. When the sign-up sheet for volunteers circulates, hands shoot up with competitive vigor. Chaperone, snack table, decorations, every role a chance to rack up social credit. You volunteer for napkin folding because it's safely anonymous, unlikely to attract conversation or the lurking question, is your husband? You prepare your script, he travels for work, he's busy these days, or the gold standard dodge, oh, you know how it is. Each answer is as true as it needs to be, no more, no less. As the evening drags on, the principal arrives, delivering a stern lecture about playground behavior and the importance of a strong family presence. You suppress a laugh. Strong presence? Your kids bring half the neighborhood home after school. If anything, your presence is more like a one-woman welcoming committee, minus the complimentary snacks. You jot notes on the agenda, doodle flowers, and try to avoid catching the eye of Mrs. Cranston, who specializes in sympathetic looks and offers to help with anything you need. Her help always comes bundled with cautionary tales and passive-aggressive recipes for casseroles that even a busy woman can manage. The air is thick with good intentions and sharper undertones. Finally, the meeting wraps up with a call for new ideas. You suggest a book drive, your voice a little too loud in the hush that follows. Someone agrees, and for a moment, you're simply a parent, not a sociological phenomenon. The applause is polite, the judgment remains. As you gather your things and prepare to make your escape, someone leans in with the dreaded question, is your husband away on business? You smile, deliver your pre-rehearsed line, and watch as curiosity dissolves into polite discomfort. The PTA meeting ends, and you file out into the night, equal parts exhausted and relieved. You survived another round in the suburban social coliseum, gladiator style, because here in the wilds of the PTA, survival is less about perfect answers and more about perfecting the art of the polite sidestep and remembering that at least, for tonight, you brought your own coffee. Getting the kids to bed is a strategic operation. There are toothbrush standoffs, misplaced teddy bears, and requests for water that rival the Colorado River in volume. You finally get everyone tucked in, at least, until someone remembers a spelling test due tomorrow. The bedtime routine begins with the announcement that it's time to get ready, which is met with the same level of enthusiasm as a pop quiz or surprise spinach. You shepherd everyone toward the bathroom, where the great toothpaste negotiations commence. "I brushed already," one insists, suspiciously minty-breathed but with suspiciously clean teeth. Another claims the toothpaste is too spicy, while the youngest is determined to eat it straight from the tube, insisting it's just like dessert. You manage to supervise a flurry of brushings, rinsings, and the age-old tradition of spitting just slightly too far from the sink. Once dental hygiene has been mostly achieved, the search for pajamas begins. This involves upending drawers, excavating under beds, and the inevitable moment when someone tries to wear a shirt as pants because it's softer that way. You triage the situation, matching tops and bottoms as best you can, gently explaining that cowboy boots do not qualify as sleepwear. The dog, always eager to join the chaos, makes off with a slipper and triggers a round of barefoot sprints through the hallway. The next phase is the bedtime story, a sacred ritual that serves both as comfort and last-ditch stall tactic. The kids select their favorite, usually something involving talking animals and zero consequences. You read in your best soothing voice, but each page is interrupted by questions about plot holes, demands for alternate endings, or debates about whether dragons would make good house pets. You keep your composure, improvise backstories, and do your best not to fall asleep mid-sentence. As the story winds down, it's time to locate the critical bedtime accessories. The favored teddy bear is missing, of course, as if it knows the bedtime schedule and is actively sabotaging it. Blankets are demanded, but not the itchy one, and pillows are flipped repeatedly to find the cool side. The youngest insists on exactly 5 stuffed animals, no more, no less, and must perform a nightly roll call to ensure all are present and accounted for. You've become a master of midnight detective work, locating rogue toys under beds and behind radiators, all in pursuit of a few hours of peace. Lights out signals the beginning of negotiations. Water is urgently needed, despite dinner having been less than an hour ago. Requests escalate in creativity. Another story, a different pillow, one more trip to the bathroom, and the classic, "I forgot to tell you something really important." Sometimes it's an existential question about dinosaurs. Other times it's the bombshell, "I have a spelling test tomorrow." You suppress a sigh, retrieve the spelling list, and launch into an impromptu review under the soft glow of a nightlight. As you back slowly out of the room, practicing the art of moving without making a sound, a voice calls out, "Can you leave the door open a crack?" You comply, leaving it at the precise angle that signals both safety and independence. Down the hall, the dog whines, and you promise him he'll get a bedtime routine of his own, maybe next week. The house finally quiets, the dust settles, and you're left standing in the dim hallway, a little rumpled, a little triumphant. It may not have been graceful, and it certainly wasn't quick, but you've won another bedtime battle. In the single-mother household, sleep is less a destination and more a negotiated ceasefire. You tiptoe away, already anticipating tomorrow's rematch, quietly celebrating every tiny victory, because sometimes the greatest triumph is simply getting everyone into bed. Pajamas, optional, peace, barely achieved, but love always guaranteed. With the house quiet, the real work begins. Worrying. You sit with your checkbook, doing the math on whether you can afford both groceries and shoes this month. The only thing louder than the ticking clock is your inner monologue, plotting tomorrow's battle plan. The day's chaos is replaced by a new kind of noise. The relentless churn of adult anxieties, delivered in high fidelity by the silence of midnight. You perch at the kitchen table, bathed in the gentle glow of the world's least efficient light bulb, a mug of cooling coffee at your elbow. The house creaks around you, pipes settling, fridge humming, the distant possibility of a child stirring. For a moment, you allow yourself to imagine that the world has paused, that you might actually catch your breath. Instead, you crack open the checkbook and begin the nightly game of which bill gets to live. Balancing the budget in the 1950s is an extreme sport for single mothers, requiring the strategic cunning of a chess master and the optimism of a carnival fortune teller. There are stacks of envelopes, some marked final notice, others optimistically labeled for next payday. You jot down columns of numbers, erasing, rewriting, and erasing again, as if the right combination might reveal a hidden prize behind door number 3. There's a delicate art to this. Pay the rent, buy the groceries, save for shoes, and, if the gods allow, set aside a quarter for the PTA bake sale. You suspect the bake sale operates entirely on single mother guilt, but you add it to the budget anyway. While you add and subtract, your mind races forward through tomorrow's schedule. There are forms to sign, lunches to pack, missing buttons to sew. You rehearse conversations in your head, polite deflections for Mrs. Cranston, plausible reasons for why little Timmy's pants are now capri style. You strategize the supermarket run like a general, mapping out coupons and sale items, ready to pivot if apples are cheaper than oranges. The quiet of the night is both a gift and a trap. For the first time all day, no one is asking for snacks, spelling help, or conflict mediation. But the silence leaves room for doubts to creep in. Are you doing enough? Did you forget anything? Are the kids okay? Really okay? Or just putting on brave faces because they know you're tired? You replay conversations, dissect decisions, and mentally draft next week's grocery list, which grows shorter and shorter the longer you stare at the checkbook. You pause to listen. Sometimes you hear laughter, the echo of your children's bedtime stories, or the muffled sound of the neighbor's television. Sometimes it's just the rhythmic tick-tock that makes the walls seem to pulse with your worries. In these moments, your thoughts loop back to the basics: love, safety, food, shelter. You tally the victories. No one went hungry. There was laughter at dinner. Homework was mostly completed, and the bedtime story made everyone giggle. For a minute, you allow yourself a small, private smile. Even if the bills aren't paid, the family is, in a way, rich. Still, the mental night shift continues. You make lists, promises, and backup plans. You check that the doors are locked, that everyone is breathing peacefully, that the milk will last through tomorrow's breakfast. You file away new worries for future shifts, dentist appointments, upcoming report cards, winter coats. Eventually, exhaustion wins out. You close the checkbook, stack the unpaid bills, and turn out the kitchen light. The house is quiet, safe, and sleeping, except for you, the tireless sentry on duty. You make your way to bed, knowing that you'll do it all again tomorrow. In the quiet dark, you remind yourself, you are enough. Your love is enough. Even if the numbers don't always add up, you are the sum total of everything your family needs. And for tonight, that will have to be enough. Laundry is not just a chore, it's an epic. You haul baskets to the washing machine, which thuds ominously with every spin. Missing socks multiply, stains become permanent, and every shirt is one button away from retirement. Laundry day begins at dawn, or as close to dawn as your willpower allows. You survey the mountain of dirty clothes, an evolving landscape of crumpled pajamas, gym shorts, church dresses, and handkerchiefs marked with mysterious stains. There are tea towels that once saw better days, now relegated to cleaning rags, and a collection of socks so mismatched you suspect the washing machine is conducting genetic experiments. With a sigh, you drag the overstuffed laundry basket through the house, each step sending a stray sock or wayward shirt sleeve flopping overboard. The laundry room is a tight, utilitarian corner of the house that smells faintly of soap and quiet defeat. You load the machine, wrestling with the lid, and pour in just enough powder to make you feel like you're living dangerously. The dial clicks, the motor whirs, and you brace yourself for that first mighty, shuddering spin, like a carnival ride, but less fun and more likely to break a finger. While the machine churns, you tackle the stain parade: grass, ink, spaghetti sauce, and the ever-elusive "what is that?" Each item is a memory, a crime scene, or a failed science experiment. You dab, blot, and scrub, armed with a bar of soap, an old toothbrush, and the ancient wisdom of mothers everywhere: cold water for blood, hot water for chocolate, and prayer for everything else. Some stains laugh in the face of your efforts and set up permanent residence. You shrug and tell yourself, at least it's clean. The wash cycle ends with a bone-rattling thunk, announcing that it's time for the most physically demanding segment of the day, the transfer to the line or the dryer. If you're lucky, the weather is good and you can hang the laundry outside, where sheets flap in the breeze and the neighborhood can enjoy the spectacle of your family's undergarments fluttering like flags. If not, you resort to the rickety dryer, which devours quarters and occasionally hope. Folding is an endurance event. You organize piles by size and owner, only for the kids to run through and demolish your system in 10 seconds flat. You fold shirts that are already halfway to threadbare, patching holes with mismatched fabric or, when desperate, declaring them play clothes. Every item is judged. Is this still wearable? Will anyone at school notice this patch? Can this dress last one more Sunday service? The answer is always maybe. Then there's the sock puzzle. You start with pairs, full of optimism. By the end, there are at least 7 lone socks, each mourning a lost partner. Some are returned to the hopeful drawer, a sort of witness protection program for hosiery. Others become dust rags or impromptu puppets for the next rainy day. Laundry day is also sorting day. Buttons to sew, hems to fix, mysterious items to identify. Occasionally, you find money, a nickel, a crumpled dollar, a prize from the universe. More often, it's marbles, toy cars, or a note from the teacher you were supposed to sign last week. As the baskets empty and clothes are mostly returned to drawers, you stand back and survey your handiwork. The laundry room looks no different. The basket, somehow, is already collecting new casualties. But for a brief, shining moment, everyone has something clean to wear, and the world feels almost manageable. In the single-mother universe, laundry is less about perfection and more about persistence. You don't conquer it, you survive it, again and again. And as the sun sets and the last sock is folded, you can declare, at least until tomorrow, that the cycle is complete. You and the kids dress in your best, or at least your cleanest, for church. The sermon is about forgiveness, but the real challenge is surviving the post-service coffee hour, where well-meaning ladies offer casseroles and unsolicited advice about finding a nice man. Sunday morning is its own special trial, a weekly ritual that demands equal parts faith, patience, and sewing skill. You line up the children and survey their outfits, negotiating peace treaties over who has to wear the scratchy sweater and which shoes are too shiny. Hair is combed, collars are straightened, and you utter a silent prayer that no one will notice the safety pin holding your daughter's skirt together. If Grace has a look, it's probably just stain-free for 5 consecutive minutes. You pile into the family sedan, whose engine coughs in protest before finally surrendering to your willpower. The drive to church is a time-honored battleground of backseat sibling squabbles, last-minute memory work. Don't forget to say thank you, Pastor, and your own pep talk. Smile, stand tall, and try not to say anything about dinosaurs during Sunday school. You arrive with seconds to spare, herding the kids inside just as the organ strikes up the first hymn. The sanctuary is a sea of hats, gloves, and Sunday best ensembles that look like they stepped straight out of a Sears catalog. You find your pew, third from the back, just close enough for the pastor to notice you, but far enough to stage a quick escape if anyone drops a hymnal or confesses a secret out loud. You nod to Mrs. Patterson, who gives you the kind of smile reserved for saints, martyrs, and women who are managing alone. The sermon today is on forgiveness, a topic you contemplate with a sideways glance at the kids, who are already engaged in silent warfare over the church bulletin. The pastor's voice is soothing, and you let your mind wander, briefly imagining a world where single mothers are canonized instead of merely pitied. When the offering plate comes around, you deposit your carefully folded bill and rehearse the story of widow's mite in your head, just in case anyone asks. Then comes the real test, the post-service coffee hour. The aroma of burnt coffee and slightly stale donuts fills the air. You make your way to the fellowship hall, where the local congregation of well-meaning ladies waits, armed with casserole recipes and 1,000 variations on "Have you met my nephew? He's just moved back from Topeka. You navigate this gauntlet with a smile and the social agility of a Cold War diplomat. For every kind word, there's an unspoken subtext. You're so brave, I just don't know how you do it. Or the classic, don't worry, God has a plan. He'd better, you think, because you're running out of them. Your children scatter, some to the cookie table, others to play in the coat closet, leaving you to fend off another round of matchmaking and gentle inquiries about your situation. Casseroles are pressed into your hands with such insistence that you start to wonder if it's possible to build a house from tuna noodle alone. You politely accept each one, mentally adding it to the freezer surprise category of next week's dinner menu. Eventually, you make your escape, children rounded up, and plates of leftovers stacked precariously in your arms. You thank everyone for their thoughtfulness, make promises to call about the Bible study, and dodge a final volley of just let us know if you need anything. Back in the car, you finally exhale, peeling off hats and loosening collars. The kids complain about itchy socks. You promise them pancakes next Sunday. And for a moment, the world is quiet again. Surviving Sunday church isn't just about faith. It's about fortitude and the knowledge that you can withstand sermons, sympathy, and a year's worth of casseroles, all in a single morning. If that isn't divine strength, what is? Every move you make is observed, noted, and discussed over garden fences. Did you buy margarine instead of butter? Was that a man's voice on the phone last night? In 1950s suburbia, the grapevine is more powerful than television. You live in a neighborhood where curtains twitch at the mere hint of footsteps on the sidewalk, and the only thing more reliable than the postman is the steady hum of speculation that floats from porch to porch. The day begins with the ritual of collecting the morning paper, which involves bracing yourself for Mrs. Cranston's cheerful, not-so-innocent good morning, as she surveys your slippers and tries to count how many cups are set on your kitchen table. Your trip to the grocery store is never a solo affair. The moment you return, bags full of store-brand treasures, Mrs. Evans across the street has already called Mrs. Howard to share her observations. She's switched to powdered milk. Maybe things are tighter than we thought. You wonder if the neighbors keep spreadsheets of your purchases, tracking every switch from name brand to generic, every sale rack splurge, every deviation from what they consider normal. You'd love to confound them with a box of imported cheese, but that would probably set off a neighborhood-wide emergency meeting. Even the smallest household decisions are fodder for the grapevine. Did you mow the lawn yourself this week? Is that a new coat, or did you just finally wash the old one? Who was that woman who stopped by on Thursday? She looked a little too stylish to be just a friend. The questions are endless, the answers never quite your own. A single phone call at dinner time, a wrong number, or perhaps your sister, becomes, within hours, a late-night call from a mysterious gentleman. There's an art to surviving the suburban microscope, a delicate dance between visibility and camouflage. You master the art of pleasant small talk, always just revealing enough to be polite. Never so much that the rumor mill can spin a full episode about you. How are you? Oh, we're keeping busy. Yes, the kids are growing like weeds. You offer up tidbits of information, the way a magician distracts with one hand while hiding the card with the other. Kids, of course, are no help. They spill secrets with the honesty of saints and the timing of comedians. My mum says margarine is just as good as butter, your youngest confides to the whole playground. By lunchtime, this becomes, they're too poor for butter. You can only laugh, wipe the dirt from their faces, and wonder what else will make the rounds before sundown. The grapevine is so efficient that sometimes it tells you things about your own life before you even know them. I heard you might be going back to school, Mrs. Howard says, though you haven't so much as cracked open a catalogue. Did you really get a raise? Someone else inquires, and you briefly entertain the fantasy before remembering that, no, you're just working a few extra hours. At first, the scrutiny is exhausting, an invisible weight you carry as you rake leaves or hang laundry to dry. But over time, you learn to harness it, turning every bit of gossip into a kind of neighborhood currency. Share a recipe, compliment someone's roses, bring cookies to the bake sale. And suddenly, you're not just the single mother, you're an indispensable part of the social ecosystem. Your presence, your resilience, your unusual choices slowly become another thread in the tapestry of suburban life. Some evenings, you stand by the window, mug in hand, and watch as the sun sets over a row of perfectly trimmed hedges and perfectly imperfect lives. The neighborhood microscope may always be focused on you, but you've learned to live under its lens, to laugh at the rumors, and to remember that, in a world this nosy, your story is bound to be the talk of the town. And if you ever do buy imported cheese, you'll make sure to put it right in the front window, just for fun. Taking a child to the doctor is an exercise in patience and plausible deniability. The doctor inquires about your home environment with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. You pretend not to notice the pamphlet about healthy family structures left on the table. Your morning begins with a call to the school, the familiar choreography of "sorry, Timmy has a cough and won't be in today," followed by the challenge of getting everyone dressed and out the door without looking like you're auditioning for a circus act. The pediatrician's office is decorated in that special shade of pale blue anxiety, complete with fish tank and a stack of 3-year-old magazines. As you enter, the receptionist gives you a once-over and jots something mysterious in her notebook, possibly your name, possibly the number of children you've wrangled through these doors. You take a seat in the waiting room, balancing a wriggling child and a stack of forms that require answers to questions like, describe your child's typical diet, and does your family eat together? You smile as you write yes, glossing over the nights when eating together means sharing popcorn in front of the black and white TV, everyone balanced on different pieces of furniture. Next to you, Timmy coughs, and a nearby mother inches her child 2 chairs further away. Eventually, you're called back. The nurse takes measurements, scribbles in a chart, and asks, "How are things at home?" in the same tone you might use to inquire if someone has considered a second opinion on their wallpaper. You assure her, "We're doing just fine," and she makes a neutral noise, the universal sign of someone who has already formed an opinion but won't be sharing it until lunch. Inside the examination room, you confront a gallery of posters urging healthy habits and, inevitably, a well-placed pamphlet about the importance of strong family roles. You occupy your child with the medical instruments, allowing a few minutes of supervised poking and prodding, ears with the otoscope, knees with the reflex hammer, and tongue depressors used as miniature swords. You attempt to read an outdated Reader's Digest, but your eyes keep wandering to the pamphlets, their cheerful fonts practically screaming, "If only you'd married a dentist, this would be easier." The doctor arrives, a man with kind eyes, brisk hands, and the uncanny ability to diagnose most ailments with a quick look and a longer conversation about bedtime routines. He checks ears, throat, lungs, and then shifts to the real exam, the subtle, probing questions about home life. "Is there a father at home?" he asks, in the same tone as, "Any allergies?" You respond with a well-rehearsed, "It's just the two of us for now," and watch as he writes something down, nodding in the way people do when they want to appear supportive but are quietly running an internal checklist. He moves on to practical advice, fluids, rest, maybe a spoonful of cod liver oil for good measure. But before you go, he hands you the Healthy Family Structures pamphlet, smiling just a bit too brightly. If you ever need resources, don't hesitate to ask. You take it, tucking it in your purse with the expired coupons and the half-eaten roll of lifesavers. Back in the waiting room, you wrangle your child into a coat, retrieve your dignity, and exchange polite smiles with the other mothers. Some days, you wonder if the real illness is social suspicion, and the real cure is simply showing up, again and again, proving that your family, while unconventional, is just as healthy and stubborn as any other. You exit the office into the cold afternoon air, prescription in hand and pamphlet quietly forgotten. In the end, surviving a doctor's visit in the 1950s isn't just about cough syrup and tongue depressors. It's about the quiet resolve to smile through the questions, ignore the pamphlets, and remember that the healthiest thing in your family is the love you carry home. Shopping for clothes means thrift stores, church bazaars, and the miracle of hand-me-downs. You mend holes, patch knees, and occasionally try to sew something from scratch. a phrase that strikes fear into your soul and results in lopsided pajamas. The world of 1950s fashion isn't filled with the glamorous images from department store catalogs or the shimmering promise of television commercials. It's much more a patchwork of whatever you can find, scrounge, or coax into one more season of wear. In your household, fashion shows take place not on runways, but in the living room, where a child twirls in a new-to-them dress with the tag from last year's church rummage sale still barely clinging on. The price? A quarter, and a promise to donate a dozen old books to next month's sale. Every hand-me-down comes with its own backstory: a cousin's growth spurt, a neighbor's closet purge, or the rare windfall of a relative who just happened to have a box of almost new shirts, each one sporting an embroidered monogram you vow to someday cover with an applique. Of course, not every item is a perfect fit. Hemming, letting out, and rolling up sleeves become second nature, and you develop a sixth sense for finding bargains in bins marked 10 cents each. Slightly imperfect. The secret: everything is slightly imperfect, but that just makes it blend in. The sewing basket is your best friend and your nemesis, overflowing with thread, safety pins, and more fabric scraps than you'll ever actually use. Patching knees is a Tuesday night tradition. You sit at the kitchen table, squinting in the dim light, tongue between your teeth, as you carefully stitch a patch onto a pair of overalls that will surely face another playground battle before the week is out. You take quiet pride in your handiwork, even if the stitches meander like a lost parade. And then there are the from-scratch projects. Sometimes necessity or optimism gets the best of you, and you embark on the adventure of making something new. It always starts with good intentions: an apron, a Sunday dress, pajamas for Christmas. The pattern looks so simple in the magazine, just 4 easy steps. In reality, there are 17. The fabric fights you, the needle snaps, and the instructions might as well be written in ancient Greek. What emerges is more abstract art than garment, but the kids wear it proudly, because it was made with love, and maybe a little frustration. Socks are rarely bought new, which means the infamous sock darning hour, a time for you to wield a darning egg and mutter about the good old days when socks lasted longer than a carton of milk. You become adept at disguising holes, matching stripes to polka dots, and quietly enforcing the family rule that no one looks at your feet if you walk with confidence. Every so often, there's a splurge: a pair of shoes from the discount rack, a real store-bought sweater for a birthday, or, for the truly lucky, a winter coat bought on clearance in August. These treasures are met with awe and handled like museum artifacts, shown off to friends and neighbors, and carefully packed away each night so they might last until next season or be passed down to the next sibling in line. In the world of single motherhood, fashion is not about keeping up with the Joneses. It's about making do, making mend, and making memories along the way. The children may not look like catalog models, but their clothes are stitched with resilience and practicality and, on a good day, a bit of homemade flair. So you knot the last thread, fold the patched-up shirt, and admire your handiwork. In this household, every hem, every patch, and every slightly crooked seam is a small badge of survival. Fashion, single mother style, you hear it everywhere. Broken home, fatherless children, raising them wrong. The stigma follows you to the playground, the post office, and sometimes even the dentist. You learn to smile serenely while internally listing the reasons you're not doomed. In the 1950s, being a single mother isn't just a personal circumstance, it's practically a public event. Every time you leave the house, you enter the arena, where the spectators are neighbors, teachers, checkout clerks, and the occasional overzealous relative who thinks single motherhood is catching, like a cold or a penchant for pineapple on pizza. You become fluent in the art of sidestepping loaded questions. Are you managing all right? How are the children coping? All asked with the earnest concern of someone who expects to find you weeping into a can of condensed soup. At school, the myth machine works overtime. You attend a parent-teacher meeting and see the teacher's eyes flicker when you walk in alone. They mention consistent discipline and positive male role models with the subtlety of a foghorn. You thank them, nod, and remind yourself that the only chaos in your house is the kind you welcome: pillow fights, baking experiments, and the periodic collapse of the laundry pile. The playground, meanwhile, is a minefield of unsolicited advice and sidelong glances. If your kids are loud, it's because they lack a father's firm hand. If they're quiet, it's a sure sign of emotional deprivation. You marvel at the double standard. Children with two parents can eat glue in the sandbox and still be called spirited, while yours are acting out for attention. You smile, tie another shoelace, and secretly root for your daughter to beat the class record for highest swing jump, father or no father. The post office is another hub for myth-making. You stand in line with your stamps and packages, overhearing Mrs. Jenkins tell her friend that she could never do it alone. You resist the urge to lean in and offer tips, like how to survive on day-old bread and second-hand hope. Instead, you focus on the little victories, like getting everyone out of the house with shoes on the correct feet and lunch money in hand. Sometimes, the dentist chimes in too, pausing mid-exam to ask, "How's everything at home?" With a tone that suggests dental health is directly correlated to marital status. You reply with a cheerful, "Just fine, thanks," even as you mentally calculate how many fillings you can afford before the next paycheck. The myths are relentless and exhausting. Single mothers are lonely. Single mothers can't raise boys to be men. Single mothers are a threat to the moral fabric of America. You keep a mental scorecard and occasionally fantasize about printing out a fact sheet. Children from single-parent homes also graduate, thrive, and, newsflash, sometimes even smile. You become an expert in the politics of composure, transforming every sideways comment into fuel for your stubborn resolve. But if stigma is persistent, so is your resilience. You build your own support network, one birthday party and casserole exchange at a time. You find allies in unlikely places, other single parents, widows, and the rare neighbor who understands that survival isn't a spectator sport. You celebrate every ordinary victory, a scraped knee bravely bandaged, a report card proudly pinned to the fridge. A household that, while unconventional, overflows with laughter and love. At night, when the house is quiet, you remind yourself that social myths are just that. Stories people tell to make sense of what they don't understand. You tuck your kids in, whisper promises of adventures to come, and know that you are not broken, not doomed, but determined. And in a world obsessed with appearances, that's a quiet kind of rebellion. So you keep moving forward, one step, one myth, one day at a time, confident that the only label that matters is the one your children whisper when they think you're not listening. "Mum, you're doing just fine." Whether he's gone because of divorce, death, or just ran off with his secretary, people always want to know. You develop an elevator pitch that is equal parts truth, fiction, and self-preservation. Sometimes, "He's not here right now," is all you can manage. Every encounter in 1950s suburbia feels like a polite interrogation. At the supermarket, Mrs. Cranston lingers in the canned goods aisle a little too long, feigning indecision over green beans while angling for a glimpse of your ring finger. At school events, the teacher's "How is your husband?" comes with a tilt of the head, as if hoping to spot him materializing behind you like a magician's rabbit. The truth, of course, is far less magical and considerably more complicated. You find yourself crafting versions of the story to suit the occasion. For the nosy neighbor, a vague, "He's working out of town," does the trick. Never mind that out of town is a flexible geography that can mean anywhere from the next city to the moon. At church, you rely on the passive construction. "He's not with us right now," which could imply a business trip, military deployment, or an existential crisis. For the truly persistent, you offer a brisk change of subject. "Did you hear about the Johnsons' new car?" hoping the grapevine will pivot accordingly. The reality is, everyone wants a reason that makes sense within their own tidy narrative. If he left, they need a villain. If he died, they want a tragedy. If you're divorced, there must be a lesson to learn, preferably one they can repeat at the next coffee morning as a cautionary tale. The question isn't just about him. It's about reassuring themselves that such things only happen to other people. Your children, meanwhile, have developed their own answers, tailored for the playground and the classroom. He's traveling, one might say, or he works a lot. Sometimes they don't answer at all, rolling their eyes at the grown-up obsession with grown-up absence. You coach them gently, no details, no blame, just a simple, "It's just us right now," delivered with the nonchalance of seasoned diplomats. There are days when you feel the absence, like a physical draft in the house, the empty place at the dinner table, the lack of someone else's shoes in the hallway. You become an expert at moving around the blank space, filling it with casseroles, homework, and the comforting routines of daily life. Still, every so often, the absence draws comment from unexpected places. The mechanic, who asks if the man of the house will want to approve the repairs. The insurance agent, who pauses and rephrases his paperwork, pen hovering in awkward sympathy. In these moments, your story becomes armor. You patch it up, keep it ready, and pull it on as needed. It's a shield against judgment, pity, and the occasional stray remark from someone who's read too many magazine articles about broken homes. You remind yourself, and sometimes others, that your family isn't missing a piece, it's just found a new shape. Privately, there are moments of honesty. With close friends, late at night, you might share the real story, the heartbreak, the anger, the relief, or the unresolved questions. But mostly, you hold onto your narrative, a blend of fact and fiction, a small, necessary protection against a world that prefers certainty over complexity. And so you continue, walking through a world of curious glances and loaded questions, answering as much or as little as you need to. He's not here right now, you say, with a calm smile, knowing that what matters isn't the story you tell the world, but the life you're living, messy, resilient, and real. In the end, your elevator pitch is less about him and more about you, moving forward, making do, and turning the inexplicable into just another part of your remarkable, ordinary day. Your day job barely pays the bills, so you take in ironing, type up resumes for the neighbors, or bake cupcakes for the church sale. Every dollar counts, and every extra job is another secret victory against the monthly ledger. If there's one thing 1950s single motherhood teaches you, it's that one income is a theoretical concept, not an actual reality. The ends don't meet, they pass each other in the night, waving politely and promising to catch up someday. So you become a quiet entrepreneur, a magician of odd jobs and microeconomics, building an empire out of spare change and borrowed flour. There's always a side hustle, and always a new one to invent. Your living room is a pop-up business incubator. Today, it's a drop-off laundry service for Mrs. Howard, who claims her arthritis flares up just in time for ironing day. Tomorrow, it's a temporary office, where you churn out perfectly typed resumes for nervous husbands looking to move up at the insurance company. Your typewriter becomes your sidekick, clacking its way through stacks of carbon-copied ambition, while you perfect your professional references, available upon request, signature flourish. Baking is another staple in your arsenal. You've become a master of the cupcake, the bundt cake, and anything that can be sold at a church fundraiser with just enough icing to hide the fact it's a little lopsided. Flour and sugar go further when they're for a good cause, and word travels quickly when you can deliver 12 identical cookies with only a mild existential crisis. The secret ingredient? Ingenuity, and maybe a little cinnamon when you can afford it. Each job is a puzzle piece in the week's budget. You keep a running tally in your head. $3 here, $2.50 there, the occasional windfall of a $5 bill slipped under a saucer by a grateful neighbor. Every quarter is a minor celebration, tucked away in a jar labeled rainy day. Though in practice, it's more often used for emergency shoe replacement or surprise field trip fee. You quickly learn that a side hustle is less about getting ahead and more about staying afloat in a world determined to make single mothers into expert jugglers. The children, of course, become accidental apprentices in the gig economy. They help with deliveries, taste test cupcakes, and, on days when you're typing up 3 resumes and mending a neighbor's curtains, Learn how to fold towels with military precision. Sometimes they grumble, but you tell them it's a family business, and someday they'll thank you for their advanced knowledge of starching a shirt collar. Word spreads about your talents. Soon, you're fixing hems, watching children after school, and even tutoring math, though you secretly review the lessons after bedtime. Armed with coffee and a fading memory of your own school days, you become the neighborhood's first call for odd jobs, the unofficial fixer of everything, from torn aprons to last-minute bake sale emergencies. Despite the exhaustion, there's a certain pride in every extra penny earned. These side hustles are tiny rebellions against the notion that one woman can't do it all. Each successful delivery, each perfectly pressed shirt, each tray of cupcakes is a reminder. You may be doing the work of two parents, but you're also building something of your own, a record of ingenuity, grit, and quiet triumphs. When you finally count up the week's extra earnings, it may not add up to riches, but it's proof that you've turned resourcefulness into survival. The side hustle isn't glamorous, and it's certainly not restful, but it's a testament to the persistence of single mothers everywhere, stretching every dollar, making every hour count, and turning extra effort into the difference between just enough and we'll make it. After the kids are asleep, you collapse onto the couch with a TV dinner and the comforting glow of I Love Lucy reruns. The world is black and white, both on the screen and sometimes in real life, but at least nobody on television asks why you're single. There's a special peace that settles over the house in the hour after bedtime, a silence so rare you can almost hear the dust motes drifting through the living room. You peel back the foil from a perfectly rectangular slab of Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes sculpted by a machine, and corn that somehow tastes like a memory of summer. The TV dinner is a marvel of 1950s science, a meal made by people in lab coats who dreamed of a future where no one had to wash dishes, and every dessert came in its own little square. You slide the tray onto your lap, adjust the rabbit ears, and exhale for what feels like the first time all day. Lucy Ricardo flickers onto the screen, larger than life. In a world where mistakes are funny, misunderstandings always resolve by the episode's end, and problems are solved with slapstick and a well-timed pie to the face, you let yourself laugh out loud, really laugh, because, for once, you're not the punchline. The world of black and white television is refreshingly free of judgment, PTA sign-up sheets, and questions about who's head of your household. Television in the 1950s is more than just entertainment. It's an escape hatch from reality. You travel from the chaos of your living room to the bright lights of Ricky's nightclub, the suburbs of Father Knows Best, or the space-age promise of tomorrow's sitcoms. For half an hour, you aren't a single mother juggling a dozen worries. You're an invisible guest in someone else's much simpler mess. There's comfort in the laugh track, in knowing that even the wildest disasters will be tidied up before the final commercial. Every once in a while, you glance around your own living room. The dishes can wait until tomorrow, and the pile of unfolded laundry seems less menacing in the soft TV glow. You tuck your feet under the Afghan, the one you crocheted yourself one ambitious winter, and let yourself just be. The world can keep its questions about your situation. In this hour, you answer to no one but Lucy, Ethel, and the occasional tinny jingle for toothpaste. Commercial breaks are their own brand of amusement, promising that every problem, from ring around the collar to social invisibility, can be solved with the right detergent or a box of gelatin. You play along, imagining yourself with a kitchen straight out of an ad, sparkling floors, and smiling children who never once color on the wallpaper. It's all fiction, but tonight, fiction is exactly what you need. There's also a strange camaraderie in knowing you're not alone. Millions of women across the country, all watching the same shows, all laughing at the same gags, all quietly daring to take a little time for themselves. For these precious minutes, you're connected by more than just the broadcast signal. You're part of a silent sisterhood of late-night survivors, united by the glow of the screen and the promise of just one more episode. As the credits roll and the station signs off with the national anthem, you stretch, gather your empty tray, and turn off the set. The world returns to color, with all its bills, chores, and tomorrows. But for 1 hour, you found a little corner of peace. No questions, no worries, just you, Lucy, and the world as it should be. Simple, sweet, and, at least for tonight, wonderfully black and white. If your kid's dad is still around, there are visits, awkward exchanges at the door, and late-night phone calls that end in confusion or frustration. If not, you get really good at pretending his absence is part of the plan. Navigating the complicated world of fatherhood, 1950s style, is a bit like trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing and no picture on the box. The official story you give to the children and the neighbors and the school and the postman is simple, polished, and just ambiguous enough to be safe. Dad's coming by this weekend. Or, on other days, he works far away. Sometimes, you find yourself reciting these lines like an actor in a never-ending soap opera, complete with costume changes and dramatic pauses. If there is visitation, you've learned to manage the ritual. You line up the children in their best outfits, freshly combed hair, scrubbed faces, and matching socks, or at least socks of similar optimism. The living room is suddenly a stage, and you, the director, ensure that everything appears as harmonious as possible. When he arrives, there's a flurry of greetings and a moment of uneasy silence. Will it be a handshake, or a hug, a cheerful reunion, or a negotiation about pickup times and who forgot to return the library books? Small talk is exchanged at the threshold. How are things? Busy at work? The kids are growing fast. The conversation is layered with subtext. Unresolved grievances, unspoken regrets, and the careful balancing act of trying to sound friendly while keeping your boundaries firmly in place. The kids sense the tension, bouncing between excitement and uncertainty. Each visit, another reminder that families can change shape, but never quite lose their rough edges. When the visit is over, there's the inevitable shift in the air. Sometimes the children come home full of stories, their pockets bulging with gum wrappers and cheap toys, eager to share their adventures. Other times, they return quieter, clutching their feelings the way they hold on to lost mittens, tightly, silently, hoping you don't notice. You hug them a little longer, offer a snack, and do your best to assure them that the world is still spinning on its axis, even if the schedule is a little unpredictable. If Dad isn't in the picture at all, you become an expert at gentle invention. Dad's far away, you say, or he loves you very much, but can't be here right now. The details are as vague as a weather forecast, adjusted to the needs of the day. Sometimes, you even find yourself wishing for a postcard from wherever away is, if only to pin on the bulletin board as proof that absence can have a story. 2. Then there are the phone calls, those evening rings that send the kids scrambling to answer. Sometimes it's him, voice crackling through the receiver, awkward and distant. There's a rush of questions. When are you coming? Can I tell you about my spelling bee? And answers that hover somewhere between promise and evasion. After the call, you gather the children, field their questions, and gently redirect the conversation to more certain ground. Tomorrow's breakfast, tonight's story, the enduring routine of home. You grow skilled at patching over the emotional potholes. You create new rituals, movie nights, pancake breakfasts, extra hugs on hard days. You reassure yourself and the kids that family is what you make it, not who's missing from the dinner table. You learn that love is measured not by grand gestures or elaborate explanations, but by the daily act of showing up, again and again, in the face of absence, ambiguity, and all the questions that have no easy answer. And when all else fails, you remember. Children are resilient, parents are human, and no amount of awkwardness at the front door or static on the phone can erase the simple fact that, in this house, love is always present, even when someone else isn't. Sometimes, late at night, you remember the dreams you put on hold. Maybe you wanted to go back to school, travel, or just have a moment to yourself. In 1950s America, resilience is less about having it all and more about making peace with what you have. After the dishes are washed and the house falls silent, you sit at the kitchen table with a cup of lukewarm tea, your mind wandering through the corridors of what-ifs and might-have-beens. There's the memory of a college catalogue, dog-eared at the courses you wanted to take, literature, art, maybe even something exotic like anthropology. Somewhere in the back of a drawer, you still keep the brochures, yellowed and soft around the edges, tucked between last year's holiday cards and a recipe for meatloaf you'll probably never use again. Some nights you picture yourself on a train, headed somewhere far away, suitcase in hand, and not a single permission slip or grocery list in sight. You imagine standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, or seeing the Eiffel Tower, or simply strolling down a city street where nobody knows your name or cares whether your stockings have a run. In your daydreams, you are always free, always unburdened by the daily calculus of budgets, casserole recipes, and other people's expectations. But reality, in all its linoleum and laundry-scented glory, has a way of rearranging priorities. Children's needs come first: school fees, shoes, birthday presents, wrapped in the funny pages. There's a leak in the roof, a sale at the grocery store, and always another lunch to pack. The dreams you once nurtured with care are gently folded and placed on the shelf, waiting for a quieter season, a little extra money, a sign that you haven't forgotten who you wanted to become. Regret sometimes sneaks in on tiptoe, whispering reminders of what could have been. You might wonder if you made the right choice, if the world really is as small as it sometimes feels. But you shake your head, tell yourself the truth in a world full of myths. Resilience is about making beauty from the scraps, forging laughter from hard days, and finding purpose in the ordinary. The secret no one puts in the advice columns is that fulfillment can look a lot like a child's smile, a story told at bedtime, or a cake that rose just right, against all odds and recipes. You catch glimpses of yourself in your children, their curiosity, stubbornness, the way they chase after their own dreams with sticky hands and hopeful hearts. In them, you see the future unfolding, wild and unpredictable, and you remember that your sacrifices were never really invisible. Every patched pair of jeans, every late-night pep talk, every birthday party conjured out of nothing but hope and ingenuity is a brick in the foundation of something lasting. Some nights, you allow yourself to imagine a second act. Maybe, one day, you'll take that class, see that city, or write that book of stories you've been telling yourself in the dark. Maybe not. For now, you celebrate the small victories, solving a math problem, mending a broken toy, comforting a child through heartbreak or flu. These moments aren't the stuff of headlines, but they're the true measure of resilience. You finish your tea, wash your cup, and head to bed, dreams safely tucked away for another night. The world may have told you to have it all, but you've learned that sometimes having a little and loving it fiercely is the greatest kind of success. In the quiet, you remind yourself you're still dreaming, still hoping, and, against all odds, still here, resilient, stubborn, and quietly undefeated. When everyone is asleep, you sneak into the kitchen for a slice of leftover pie or the last cookie. It's quiet, peaceful, and for once, nobody is asking anything of you. In the end, these small, stolen moments are what keep you going. The whole house has finally settled, the kids breathing softly behind bedroom doors, the dog curled in a heap by the back door, the endless laundry finally tamed and folded. Well, most of it. There's a hush so complete you can hear the refrigerator's gentle hum and the subtle creaks of old floorboards, each one a familiar part of your nighttime map. The kitchen, in the daylight a stage for the day's endless dramas, now feels like your own private retreat. You move through the darkness by muscle memory, careful not to wake anyone. The overhead light stays off. Instead, you open the fridge door just enough to let a cool rectangle of light spill out, painting the linoleum with a slice of moonglow. There's a quiet thrill in these midnight forays, a sense of mischief and freedom you rarely allow yourself during waking hours. You're not mom, the judge and jury of snacks and mealtimes. You're just a person with a spoon and a dream. Tonight's prize is humble, maybe a corner of apple pie, slightly soggy but sweet. Maybe a lone cookie tucked behind the margarine. Maybe just the last spoonful of canned peaches, eaten straight from the tin. It doesn't matter. The flavor is secondary to the sheer luxury of eating it uninterrupted, without having to split it into equal parts, or negotiate with a child determined to count chocolate chips. For a few minutes, the kitchen belongs to you and you alone. You lean against the counter, savoring the peace and the stolen sweetness. Your mind drifts over the day, its small battles and tiny triumphs, the things you managed, the things you dropped, the endless carousel of chores and worries. There's a strange comfort in the way the world feels smaller and quieter at night, as if you've pressed pause on everyone else's expectations. No one needs you to tie their shoes, find a missing mitten, or explain why socks come in pairs but always vanish in singles. You remember how, when you were younger, midnight snacks felt like a daring secret. You'd tiptoe down the hallway at your parents' house, careful to avoid the squeaky step, giggling as you reached for a cookie meant for tomorrow's lunch. Now, the stakes are different, but the feeling is the same. A private rebellion, a tiny reclaiming of self in a world that expects you to be selfless every waking moment. This is the time when you let yourself think of nothing at all, or of everything, in the safe glow of the refrigerator. Maybe you review tomorrow's to-do list, or maybe you dream a little of a vacation you might take, a dress you'll buy when the budget allows, a night of uninterrupted sleep. You let yourself be something other than in charge, just for a breath or two. The snack disappears, the quiet lingers. You rinse your plate, wipe the crumbs from the counter, and close the fridge with a soft click. The world will be loud and demanding again soon, but for now, you've given yourself the gift of a few silent, secret minutes. You pad back to bed, lighter somehow, soothed by sugar and the hush of the house. In the grand ledger of single motherhood, these are the moments that don't get tallied, but always tip the balance back toward hope. A midnight snack, a private joy, a reminder that you are here, not just surviving, but sometimes, in the still of the night, quietly thriving. From neighbors with unsolicited casserole recipes to aunts who insist you try smiling more, advice comes at you like spam mail before there was spam mail. Everyone has an opinion, but none of them come with a babysitter attached. You learn to nod along as people suggest everything from cod liver oil to just finding a nice widower, all while mentally filing these tips in your personal circular file. In the 1950s, unsolicited advice is the national pastime. It arrives on your doorstep with the morning paper, wafts over the backyard fence with the scent of Mrs. Cranston's overcooked stew, and fills every pause in church potluck conversation. If advice were currency, you'd be rich, at least until you tried to cash it in for a quiet afternoon or a load of free laundry. The neighbors are particularly generous with their expertise. Mrs. Howard, who has never managed to keep a houseplant alive, is nevertheless confident about how you should organize your household schedule. You know, dear, if you just make lists, you'll never forget anything, she says, handing you her annotated calendar. Her secret to a happy home? A hot meal on the table at 6 and fresh lipstick, even for the grocery store. You thank her, jot down buy lipstick, and immediately lose the note in the bottom of your purse. Then there are the relatives, those aunts and cousins and in-laws who drop in just to help. Help often involves a thinly veiled intervention. A casserole, always tuna, a pamphlet about budgeting, or a book with a title like How to Win at Life, the family edition. Aunt Mabel's specialty is backhanded encouragement. You're so brave, darling. Of course, if you'd just let your hair grow, maybe you'd meet a nice man at church. You marvel at her ability to offer both comfort and critique in a single breath. The advice isn't limited to your domestic life. Parenting, of course, is open season. Mrs. Evans at the playground will happily explain why your child should eat more liver, while her own son crafts mud pies and tastes them for scientific accuracy. Children need discipline and fresh air, she says, as her daughter scales the slide backwards. If you so much as wince at a scraped knee, someone will inform you that in my day, kids were tougher. You suspect that their day also included walking uphill both ways and surviving on lard sandwiches. Health fads are another favorite. Cod liver oil is prescribed for everything from colds to character flaws. The only thing thicker than the taste is the insistence with which it's recommended. A spoonful a day keeps the doctor away. Just mix it in orange juice. They'll never notice. You doubt this, but add buy more orange juice to your list, just in case the children unionize and demand better compensation. Of course, the most persistent suggestion is to just find a nice widower. There's always someone, somewhere, with a nephew or a co-worker looking for a good woman. You field these matchmaking attempts with diplomatic skill, inventing previous engagements and mysterious laundry emergencies as needed. Sometimes, you fantasize about posting a sign on your door, "No unsolicited suitors or casserole recipes, please." Through it all, you practice the single mother's greatest superpower, the polite smile and non-committal nod. You become an expert in "thank you, I'll consider it," delivered in a tone that translates to "not in this lifetime." Your real coping strategy is to surround yourself with friends who know the value of solidarity over solutions, other women who can share an eye roll, a cup of coffee, and a silent agreement to let each other be. At the end of the day, the well-meaning meddlers remain. Their advice may never change your life, but it does offer one small comfort. In a world this full of opinions, you'll never run out of stories to laugh about later. And, as you tuck away the latest pamphlet next to the uneaten tuna casserole, you remind yourself that the best advice is sometimes the one you never take. Sometimes you need help, but 1950s social services are less supportive, safety net, and more choose your own adventure. But all endings involve paperwork. You fill out forms under the watchful eye of a clerk who looks like she's auditioning for a role as disapproving nun. The questions are endless, the judgment is thick, and you start to wonder if the real test is whether you'll survive the application process with your dignity intact. The office itself is designed for discouragement. Grey walls, creaky chairs, and an air of stale coffee and quiet despair. You take your seat beneath a flickering fluorescent light, clutching a folder full of documents, birth certificates, pay stubs, last month's utility bill, and a letter from the school about Timmy's lunch account. The waiting room is a lineup of weary women in sensible shoes, each rehearsing their answers, each carrying their own private hurricane in a manila envelope. Your number is called 17, and you step up to the counter, trying to channel confidence and humility in equal measure. The clerk, whose glasses rest on the tip of her nose, peers over the frames with an expression honed by decades of budget cuts and questionable excuses. She begins with the basics: name, address, marital status, but soon pivots to more probing queries. Why did your husband leave? Have you considered reconciliation? Do you have any other sources of income, such as family support or personal savings? You get the sense you're being evaluated for sainthood, or possibly a reality show about creative survival. You fill out the forms, so many forms, while deciphering fine print that appears to have been written in another language. The questions are a blend of the obvious and the absurd. List all previous addresses since birth. Do you own a radio? Are you now, or have you ever been a member of a book club? You check the boxes, add footnotes, and suppress the urge to write. I'm just doing my best in the margins. At every stage, there's a signature required, a supporting document missing, a new line to stand in. When you ask for clarification, the clerk sighs, points to a faded poster on the wall. All inquiries must be submitted in writing, and hands you another form. You thank her with the patience of a saint and a smile you reserve for bureaucratic encounters and awkward PTA meetings. There's always a moment when you wonder if the paperwork is the actual benefit. Maybe, by surviving the process, you'll be granted a medal, or at least a coupon for free aspirin. But mostly, you endure because there's no alternative. The rent is due, the children need shoes, and pride doesn't pay for groceries. Around you, other women sigh, share tips, always bring extra copies, and offer silent solidarity, forming a temporary sisterhood forged in triplicate. When you finally reach the interview stage, you sit across from a caseworker with a rubber stamp and an impressive collection of files. The questions become even more personal. Are you dating anyone? How often do your children see their father? Would you consider moving in with relatives to save costs? You answer with practiced neutrality, careful to reveal just enough to qualify, but not so much that you end up in a lecture about good choices. Approval, when it finally comes, is both a relief and a reminder of your vulnerability. You accept the assistance with gratitude and a dash of stubborn pride. You know you'll be back, refilling forms, defending your dignity, navigating a maze that seems designed to test not only your need, but your endurance. As you leave, paperwork in hand, you promise yourself that next time you'll be even more prepared, more documents, more patience, maybe even a sense of humor. Because in the 1950s, surviving the welfare office isn't just about getting help, it's about keeping your head up, your paperwork in order, and your spirit unbroken, no matter how many forms they make you fill. You plan a birthday party, hoping to make it special on a shoestring budget. Streamers are homemade, the cake comes from a mix, and party favors are whatever you found at the dime store. The kids have fun, but there's always a parent, usually Karen's mum, who asks loudly if daddy will be joining. You just smile, light the candles, and pretend you don't hear the silence that follows. Birthday parties in the 1950s are a blend of creative invention and bare-knuckle logistics. Invitations are handmade, construction paper, blunt scissors, and a hopeful crayon signature. The RSVP system is mostly word of mouth, plus a few calls from mothers double-checking whether boys are invited, girls are invited, or if you'll need extra chairs. You nod, say yes to everything, and mentally calculate how many folding chairs you can borrow from next door without sparking a neighborhood controversy. The morning of the party is an adrenaline-fueled marathon. You assemble the house into party mode, which is a polite way of saying you push all the clutter into one closet and declare the living room temporarily off-limits to muddy shoes and sticky fingers. Streamers made from cut-up tissue paper hang bravely from doorways. Balloons, blown up by your own slightly dizzy lungs, bob around the kitchen, occasionally escaping to the ceiling where only the tallest cousin can retrieve them. The cake is a box mix masterpiece, slathered in frosting that's more powdered sugar than substance. You smooth it as best you can, knowing full well that the kids will only remember how many sprinkles you managed to cram on top. You cut the cake into as many generous slices as possible, plus an emergency parent piece for the grown-up who inevitably drops by just as you're about to serve. Party favors are a grab bag of dime store wonders. Plastic rings, tiny tops, maybe a packet of candy, or a small rubber ball. Each child is thrilled to receive them, no matter how modest, and for a few minutes, your living room rings with shrieks of joy and the rattle of marbles across the floor. The children play musical chairs, pin the tail on the donkey, and invent games as only children can. Rules morphing every 5 minutes, prizes exchanged and re-exchanged with the logic of international diplomacy. The real games, of course, are played among the adults. As you're pouring Kool-Aid and handing out napkins, you catch the sideways glances, the speculative whispers. Did you see who dropped off Timmy? Was that her brother? Or you field these as you always do, with a smile, a refill of punch, and a quick change of subject to the weather, the latest bake sale, or the miracle that the balloons have lasted this long. Then comes the question, as inevitable as spilled punch, will Daddy be joining us today? Sometimes it's wrapped in concern, sometimes in idle curiosity, and sometimes in the unfiltered honesty of another child. You light the candles, invite everyone to sing, and let the chorus drown out the awkwardness. You've learned to master the art of celebration in the face of silence, to hold the mood steady and keep the party rolling, even when you're balancing birthday cake and the weight of expectations. The candles are blown out, wishes are made, and for a little while, everyone is just happy, faces smeared with frosting, hands sticky with sugar, and laughter echoing off the walls. You snap a photo to remember it by. Kids packed tight, grins wide, a little blur in the background that's the mark of a life moving faster than your camera can catch. When the party ends, you pack up the leftover cake, gather lost toys, and field thank yous from grateful parents. You look around at the mess, a beautiful, joyful, sticky mess, and realize that for all the elephants in the room, the only thing that truly matters is the sound of your child's laughter and the memory of a wish whispered into candle smoke. Because at the end of the day, a birthday isn't about who's missing, it's about who's there, loving, cheering, and cleaning up the sprinkles. And that, in the circus of single motherhood, is a celebration worth having. Once a year, you wrangle the kids into their cleanest clothes for a trip to the local photographer. The process is an exercise in patience and illusion. Hold still, don't blink, and try to look like the wholesome family everyone expects. The photographer doesn't ask about dad, but the empty spot on the bench says it all. Still, you treasure the photo, proof you're holding it together, even if just for a moment. Family photo day arrives with all the stress and pageantry of a minor holiday. Outfits are laid out the night before, dresses ironed, shirts buttoned, socks hunted in pairs like rare birds. Your children sense the gravity of the event. They grumble but comply, bribed by promises of ice cream and the vague threat of "this is for the Christmas card." Your own outfit is chosen with extra care, designed to convey both effortlessness and the undeniable message that you've got things under control, thank you very much. Getting everyone out the door is a feat of project management. Hair is combed, cowlicks tamed, and faces scrubbed to a brightness rarely seen outside of Sunday mornings. You wield a tissue for last-minute smudges, hoping no one spills juice on their collar or rubs their nose just as you're pulling into the photographer's parking lot. The studio itself is a world of velvet curtains, giant umbrellas, and the faint scent of hairspray mixed with old carpet. The photographer, a kindly man with a fixed smile and a voice trained to cut through chaos, greets you with practiced cheer. "Just the three of you today?" he asks gently, his eyes flickering just a moment toward the space where Dad would traditionally stand. You nod and answer, "Just us," already used to smoothing over the expectations that linger like dust motes in the sunlight. The kids are posed on a bench, instructed to sit up tall and smile like you mean it. The youngest squirms, the oldest tries for a dignified look, and the middle child pulls a face when the photographer isn't watching. You arrange yourself at the center, one arm draped over each child, trying to radiate calm and confidence, even as you silently will everyone to just hold still for 2 seconds. The empty spot to your right feels enormous, but you focus on the laughter bubbling up as the photographer makes silly noises to get a real smile. Click, flash. The moment is captured, a snapshot of something between chaos and perfection. The photographer shows you the proof: 3 grins, 2 straight ties, 1 crooked bow, and a mother who looks a little tired but absolutely present. You approve it, even if someone's sock is showing or there's a cowlick you missed. Real life isn't retouched, after all. The photos are delivered a week later, and you tuck one into your wallet, mail a few to relatives, and save the best for the mantle. Visitors comment on how lovely you all look, how big the kids are getting, how lucky you are. No one mentions the space on the bench, and you don't offer an explanation. In the privacy of your home, you allow yourself a moment to study the picture, to see not what's missing but what's there. Determination, togetherness, and a little bit of magic holding the whole show together. Years later, the photos will outlast the fashions and the fuss. The kids will laugh about who made the silliest face or wore the itchiest sweater, and you'll remember the effort it took to create a picture of family. Not as the world expects it, but as you built it, one smile, one stubborn act of love at a time. In the end, the family photo isn't about pretending nothing's missing. It's about celebrating all the ways you've managed to keep things together, even, especially, when it would have been easier to let go. And if that isn't picture perfect, nothing is. So tonight, as you settle into your clean bed with soft sheets and a thermostat that doesn't require feeding coal into anything, maybe spare a gentle thought for the single mothers of the 1950s, the quiet heroes who navigated a world of casseroles, coupon clippers, and constant side-eye, armed with nothing but sheer willpower, a can opener, and possibly a prayer or two. It wasn't easy. Every day was a marathon, making breakfast from nothing, enduring the weekly gauntlet of PTA meetings, and surviving endless advice from neighbors who thought helpful meant reminding you what you're missing. The struggle was real, the coffee was instant, and the laundry eternal. And yet, these women kept going, one mismatched sock, one patchwork dinner, and one bedtime story at a time. They faced the kind of relentless judgment that would make modern social media look like a group hug, all while stretching every dollar and tucking their worries behind a polite smile. They were magicians, crisis managers, and sometimes miracle workers, turning a single can of soup into a feast and a rainy afternoon into a holiday. Their resilience wasn't flashy, but it was fierce, and their victories, no matter how small, were hard-won. So, as you lie here tonight, cocooned in warmth and quiet, maybe whisper a small thank you for all the women who carried their families through storms, both literal and social, who baked birthday cakes from a box and hope, who showed that you don't need a perfect picture to have a family worth fighting for. Because history isn't just wars and presidents, it's the story of stubborn, hopeful, wonderfully ridiculous people who got up every morning and did what needed to be done, even when the world made it harder. The single mothers of the 50s proved that love and grit can outlast almost anything, even canned ham and bad advice. Rest easy, knowing that you are the beneficiary of their grit and humor, and that whatever life throws at you, at least you won't have to explain your laundry situation to the entire neighborhood. Good night.